So my name is Kathryn O'Brien, and I have been teaching art for the last 1.5 years. And before that, I've taught grades all the way through from 3 up to grade 9. And this is...
My name is Jennifer Harper, and I'm currently teaching grade 1, but I've done everything between 1 and 7, so jumping around there, but 1 and 4 the most.
And we have written a book called Student-Driven Learning, Small, Medium, and Big Steps to Inspiring and Empowering Our Students. Actually, I got the title wrong. Empowering and Engaging Our Students. Sorry, I can handle 100 kids in a gymnasium screaming, ready for lunch, but adults, it just takes me a little while to get used to. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to explore abstract art today. So you all were given a little bag, and it's on your table. There's going to be 3 different ways that it's going to be explored, so be prepared that a table group next to you might be doing something different. Have fun with it. There's glue sticks for some of you, pipe cleaners, go wild, enjoy. You have 6 minutes. Okay, maybe 7. We can play around with the time. Okay. I don't know if I...
This one is.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Now that you're all actually right in the middle of your producing of your abstract art, or in some cases writing down some answers, we are going to stop you. But I will not be offended if you continue to work on your art during the duration of our presentation, because as a teacher, this is not new to me that you maybe need to do something while I'm talking. I'm just going to readjust this. All right. So if you didn't see, there was some buzz in some of the areas of the room. Actually, there was a buzz in all areas of the room when we were walking around. And we just looked at abstract art through 3 different teaching lenses. One of them was what we might call a free learning approach. If you had the task and it was described with little sort of bubbly letters, could you just let us know what you had to do? So if you had the task and it just asked you...
It looks like this.
It looks, I think, the table
If you had
right
this
there.
task,
With bubbly letters.
Can you tell us what you had to do? Who else had this task? There's 4 tables, wasn't there?
Yep, yours right at the back is that one. So what did you have to do?
It says, look at Vasily Kandinsky's artwork. Consider what you liked about the artwork. Your task is to create a piece of art inspired by Kandinsky.
Done. If you had no fun and cool supplies inside your bag and you just had paper and some actual black and white photocopies of the paintings, could you tell us what you had to do?
That's like
An analysis of abstract art. And I was quite mean to them, but I remember this. This is one of my favorite teaching moments, was learning about artwork and having black and white photocopies of the artwork so you couldn't even see the pictures. So we did do a little bit of that trick to you as well. And if we haven't talked about your topic, I know this table right here has it. Could you describe to us a little bit about your task? Sorry to put you on the spot.
We had to read the information about abstract art and then look at the images in the work and, no, we skipped that part. Sorry.
It's okay.
Actually, most of us only saw one painting, right? So, and then we had to create a piece of art.
Okay. So we did these 3 different teaching approaches because we wanted to distinguish for us what is student-driven learning. Student-driven learning is not completely free learning where there's no information given, no guidance or support. And it's definitely not the teacher-directed approach where we've given you all the information, there's no exploration. Student-driven learning is you get the guidance and the support from the teachers. You have an inquiry-based approach to the learning, but you still get to play and have fun. So for us, we know we have curriculum needs that have to be addressed, and it's very rare, if ever, that we have complete flexibility about what skills and knowledge our students need to acquire. So Jen and I really got interested in this because we want an approach to teaching where we can look at our current practice and look at our curriculum and find ways that we can crack it open a bit and provide for student choice. So our next present. So nothing about learning is ever static, and certainly nothing in education is static. And over the past few years, there's been a lot of rhetoric about the fact that we need to change our system of education. This quote is from a TED Talks that aired last week. It was a special on PBS. You can get them online now. And it was from all different leaders in the educational world. And the message came again and again and again. And that is that we need to shift education to provide opportunities to encourage creative thinkers, critical learners, increase engagement, promote resilience, help students develop emotional buoyancy, and ensure character development. But as teachers, how do we manage all of this? And for Jen and I, the answer has been we need to put our students in the driver's seat. And then there's a but how. I've heard that said before. And so that's what inspired us to write this book, is we wanted to find some practical ways to unpack the idea of student-driven learning through hands-on examples. And we wanted to make the concept accessible to anyone. So in our book, we have what we call small shifts or small hops. We went with the driving theme, medium-sized drives, or for someone who's looking to make a real shift in the practice, what we call big journeys. And as we started looking at the theme of student-driven learning, we found that we really could cover it underneath 6 ideas. And while we're going to talk about them today in a linear fashion, our book is not meant to be read in a linear fashion. It's meant to be looked at in bits and pieces, the things that you might find interesting, inspiring to you, and things that you can see fitting in your own classroom. So the first theme that I'm going to talk about is the idea of changing our teaching practice. So learning is not static. We're constantly learning. So we can't look at our teaching practice as something that's fixed. And student-driven learning requires that we take a new direction with our teaching practice. Traditional models of teaching have us as a teacher standing like I am at a podium being the bearer of all knowledge. But that's not really the way it is in your real classroom. We have so many different roles to play. We're facilitators, skill developers, artists as you were today, resourcers, collaborators, cheerleaders, and we cannot expect to fulfill all these roles and also have an unlimited supply of knowledge. With globalization, digital technologies, we can't have a one blanket fits all size of education. We need to teach students how to learn. How are you doing, Jen? Instill in them a sense, that's Jen's little baby out there, wondering why his mom isn't with him. Instill in them a sense of inquiry and wonder. And so as part of this process, we need to engage students. We want them to be questioners. Now I know if your students are anything like mine, they ask many, 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 many questions. And we want to help these become meaningful ones. So these questions also might guide the direction of their learning. Anytime I introduce a new topic with my classroom, we always brainstorm the class's questions. And then we go through and we categorize these questions. And these questions help us form the direction of our learning. Carol, who's going to be presenting shortly after us, is going to be talking a little bit more about critical questioning, so we won't steal the show from her. But what we'd like to do as the beginning of our presentation is ask you, there's some post-it notes if you haven't cut those up and made them part of your abstract art that we handed out. If you did, that's okay. That's actually great. We can get you some new post-it notes. And if you could please write down one question per sticky that you might have about student-driven learning or about inquiry-based learning. And Jen will come by and gather these.
I will. Do you guys have any questions?
So just in the interest again of time,
Yep.
We're going to continue on, and Jen will be coming by to collect your questions. And we will be looking at your questions as we get further along in our journey. So the next theme that really stood out for us is this idea that you need to know your students.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
John Hattie, a researcher from Down Under, he spent over 15 years analyzing and researching what factors contribute to student achievement. He wrote a book about it. It's a beautiful book called Visible Learning. I'm going to sum up his book in one statement. And to me, what resonated from his study is if we want student achievement, we need to know our students to get them to buy into their learning. And this concept is not new. Knowing your students, their interests, their confidence, their fears, what motivates them, what encourages them, what discourages them, all of these we incorporate into our classroom to see what tasks, learning tasks, are going to work and what tasks might flop. In student-driven learning, we talk in our book about ways that we get to know the students. I won't go into all of them, but some of them can be as small as writing a statement on the board at the end of the day about something that's happened in the classroom and getting the students to give you a thumbs up, middle of the road, thumbs down about how they might be feeling about that. One thing my students looked forward to when I taught grade 5 for many years was every few months they would do a little report card on me. And I would take that reflection and we could talk about it. And yes, it was daunting at times. And they always had a few critical things to say, but it was nice for them to know that I cared about their feedback. And the one that we all know and try and I know make time for is the idea of that sunshine call or letter home, where we take the time to recognize something positive that's going on with our students and sharing that with their family. The other way we can let students know that we really value their input as members of the classroom is to get them involved in the classroom design and organization. This list up here, the essential agreements, at the start of the year, rather than beginning the year by telling my students what my expectations are for the class, we sit down as a class and we talk about what they want to have in a classroom. What do we need to make this classroom work? And we call those our essential agreements. We write them out, they all sign them, and that's what we return to if at times behavior might go awry, as it does. We return to these essential agreements. The other thing is job boards. I know that Scholastic sells many kits where they outline all the different classroom jobs, but really, the students are very good at identifying what jobs they believe are needed in the classroom, and they will add in some really funny ones that perhaps you maybe didn't think were important, but to them are very valuable. So at the start of the year, you can begin by deciding what jobs need to be filled in your class and asking the students to make little descriptions of these jobs, and then using those jobs throughout the year. And if you feel really brave, getting them to help you with the design of the classroom has also been really good for me, because I'm big. I'm an older woman. To them at 5, 6 years old, they might see the classroom much differently than I do. So when I ask them about the classroom design, they might move the furniture around in a way that's better for them than I would have perceived originally. So if we help them feel ownership of the space, we also can help them feel that sense of responsibility that comes with the ownership. So here we are in May. We know our students, perhaps too well. But one thing, as we hurtle towards the end of the year, I know how I feel right now. I'm writing reports, I'm trying to contact parents, I'm talking with the teachers of the students I'm getting next year going, awesome, or oh boy, how do I deal with that? I'm trying to get my orders in, and it's easy to lose sight that I have probably one of the most valuable resources in my class, and that is the group of students that has just spent the year with me. They are the resources that can tell the upcoming students what cool things to look forward to, or units that they really enjoy. And so it's nice at the end of the year to let these experts in your class take some ownership of what's going to happen next year. So in the past, I've had my students, and they've created a welcome poster, some kind of welcome mural that I have up for the students coming in the next year. And so when the new students come in, they see two things. They see, one, wow, this is a classroom that we can take some ownership of, and they also realize that there's a legacy there. And it helps my students from the previous year. They love to come back and visit and make sure that the work that they've done is still being valued. Other things you can do is I've had students write letters to the upcoming students. And then the first day of school, I put those letters on the desk, and they really enjoy that. And Jen,
my grade ones make a book for the kindergarten guys. So they make a book and they explain how the classroom works and how Miss Harper's room runs by the students. And so that we explain to them at the end of the year, and then as they come into grade 1, we reread that book, and then that transcends into how we set up the room in September. So I don't have to do all the legwork. Last year's kids did it, so it's good. The next part that we're going to talk about is fueling the spark. And fueling the spark is that huge motivation factor. It's getting those kids really excited and really buzzed about what they were learning about. Inspired a little bit by Daniel Pink's book Drive, if you've read it. Talking about how we motivate kids and how we get them excited to learn. When you type in motivation on a Google search, you get about 214 million hits. So it's a pretty hot topic. And we really want to break it down into what can we do in our classroom to get these kids so that they're excited at the beginning of the unit and then all the way through. So for example, there's a picture of rocks on the bottom, and that's sort of a random picture to throw up beside fueling the spark, unless you're going to bring them together and make sparks. But what we do in my grade 4 classroom is we do a unit on rocks and minerals. I take the rocks and I throw them on the floor with a bunch of magnifying glasses and flashlights and a bit of paper. And my guys know that it's their job to just look at the rocks in as many different ways as they can, play with them, and ask questions. And they have to come up to me, and they have to tell me their questions, and I'll record them really quickly for them. And then I'll take all of these questions, and I get a slew, like a real slew of questions. And the next day, we're going to take these questions. I'm going to have them printed off. The kids are going to cut them out, and we're going to sort them. Guys, you've got 5 weeks to do this unit. What are the major themes that you see in these questions? There's a lot on rocks versus mineral. Great, let's spend a week on that. There's some on crystals. Some year we have crystals, some year we don't. Ms. Harper, we found a lot on uses of rocks. Great, there's another week. And so the kids are sorting and they're organizing, which is awesome, because then they come to school, they know in 2 weeks we're going to do uses of rocks, and we just got our kitchen done, and I've got a granite countertop at home, and I'm going to bring that in. And so all of a sudden artifacts are coming into the classroom just by having the kids plan out or organize their units of inquiry. Questioning is such a big part of it, and again, we don't want to steal the thunder for later on, but we have the kids ask the questions, and that we use the app there, iBrainstorm, which the kids just can type in on the iPad, play with, ask questions, and then they can sort them into groups themselves. So there's a digital technology tool to do it. There's so many out there. And we'll talk about the other one in a second, because we're going to end with the little pioneer, the hairy pioneer, very hairy. But this chapter talks a lot about motivation. It talks about goal setting, how to make goal setting realistic in the classroom, what's intrinsic goals versus extrinsic goals, which ones work according to theory and practice, and which ones work for us, and how do we do it, and how do we set that up in our classroom. Emotional buoyancy, we talk about, we want our kids to make mistakes. They have to make mistakes. They're not going to learn if they don't make mistakes. And so, but we also want them to feel like they're successful doing that. We want to talk about growth mindset. We want to talk to them about how learning is you're supposed to sort of bump and feel yourself along the road and learn from what you're doing and then pick yourself up and keep going along the process. And so we got lesson plans on emotional buoyancy and how to bring those kids back up again if they're feeling sort of down in the dumps. And we've got a lot of stuff on resiliency and grit, and what it means to keep on going, and what it means to sort of put your pedal to the metal and keep trying hard, even when you're having those days where you don't feel like it. But it's about choices, and that's what Fueling the Spark is really about. It's about sort of getting them engaged, getting them motivated, and giving them lots of different choices. We want our students to have certain knowledge and skills, and we understand that that's really important, that they're going to have certain knowledge and skills, but we also want to prepare them for the future. And we don't know, I don't know, maybe you do, what the world's going to be like in 50 years. I don't know the technologies that are going to exist. I don't know the jobs that are going to be there. I can't predict 25, and I'm pretty sure I can't predict 10 either. And so getting them to think creatively and outside of the traditional box, and to really sort of reflect on their own learning and how to hit their targets is really important for them, because they're not going to be, their future is not going to be as linear as I think ours was in the past. And so we need to set that sort of positive impact up for them. This chapter also talks a lot about autonomy and giving the kids their own choice. That's one of the beauties of teaching, isn't it? Is that we have the autonomy in our classrooms, and we have that power and choice of our own. It talks a lot about circular learning as well, making sure the kids are collaborative coaches, making sure that when they talk to each other and they reflect with each other, they're really giving each other good insight. And it's not just like, hey, good job, but it's something more meaningful that impacts them. And we've set up all kinds of lessons and activities to sort of guide them through, giving them the language to do that. And the last thing it talks about is mastery. And the whole concept of picking multiplication or something that they need to know, and having them, if you engage them or empower them or give them a choice of how they want to do that, like there's many different ways to multiply. Teach them the ways, sure, we'll do that, and then pick your way. And you decide which one you want, and then you master it, and you show us how you've done it. And so using that technique as so they can carve their own path. And in our lesson plans, there's a few of them. We've given you a few in your packages. We've called the actual lesson part of it Unfolding the Roadmap. And the reason why we did that, we didn't number them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We just made bullets instead, and that's throughout the book. Because we can't predict what your students are going to want to do in what order. We can't predict what's going to empower your students or what's going to engage them. So we're going to give you a whole slew of ideas, and you can read through them, and then you can determine for yourselves what path you want to take with your little guys, what will work for you guys. And that's sort of how we designed our book as well.
Now, the next one is near and dear to my heart, and that is fostering a creative mindset. If you haven't heard of Sir Ken Robinson, I highly encourage you to Google him and listen to his TED Talks. He has some compelling things to say about the creativity, the power of creativity, and what's happening in our current school system around creativity. The world, I'm happy about this. We're redefining the concept of creativity. So it's not something that we just attribute to the arts. It's a concept that is teachable, learnable, and accessible. And in our book, we go through ways that you can assess creativity and some of the ways you can bring it into your classroom. I put this example up on the board. Show me 5 as many ways you can. It's from a grade 1-2 split class. And this is a perfect example of getting students to think creatively. It is the maths, yes, but they're having all their different original ideas, and all those ideas have value. And that is creative thinking. I'm going to move on.
We're very aware for lunch. Oh, no, we really are. Okay. Diving deeper. This is actually the last segment or pillar for us. And diving deeper is we don't want it to be the last. It has to be embedded within. Again, it's not supposed to be in a linear order. But just like Bob and Larry mentioned during their presentation, they said, listen for a reason. What's the reason you're listening for? And that's it. We want them to do all of this. We want them to ask questions. We want them to create. We want them to experiment. We want them to do all of these wonderful things. And then we need them to actually reflect and evaluate what they did. Was it valuable? How are they evaluating their information? Are they extracting meaning? Are they making decisions? And are they connecting to understand different things? And so it's that critical thought reflection. Are they can we sort their questions? Can we sort their thinking? There's all kinds of games and tricks for if they got to that one level, how to get them and pump them up to that next level, right? So you sort of you want to get them sort of thinking a little bit more about that topic, find the big idea, push them a little bit further. And on that note, we have your questions. We have your questions now about what you guys are thinking about in student-driven learning and what it is. And so
that we're going to answer rapidly in the next
rapidly,
1 minute
very rapidly.
so that we don't take up too much more time.
There was a bunch on assessment. How do you assess student-driven learning? There was a bunch on that. And I would say that within the book, it's there for sure. There's actually an entire chapter at the very end just dedicated to assessment. There's also within the creativity chapter, because a lot of people are like, how do you assess creativity? That's very scary. You don't want to squash them. But so within that chapter, there's also a section on how to assess them as well. So it's definitely there.
A few ones that stand out about just initiating the approach. There's an American composer, John Cage, and he has a beautiful statement, and it says, just begin. And that's really how you initiate the approach. You just begin. I would start first with questions, getting your students to ask questions and talking to them about what kind of questions are going to have bigger answers or deeper meaning, and what kind of questions have those right there answers that we can figure out quickly.
And there was a few questions I noticed as well on how do you cover the curricular expectations. With the rocks and mineral example that I showed you, when I threw those rocks at whatever unit we do, they're going to ask the questions that nail the inquiry. They'll cover the Ontario curriculum to a greater depth than you will by the time they're done their questions. If you prompt them and you give them that you feel that spark, and they don't ask the questions the first day, it might take a week to get them sort of into the spot where you want them to be. But once they start asking their questions, they're going to hit your curricular expectations better than you thought you would have. Like, I find every single time they do that. And sometimes they go into way more depth than I would as well. So they're the motivators to do it. They're the ones that will actually hit that very nicely.
There's really brilliant questions in here, and I wish we could go through and answer each of them. We can't right now, just in the interest of time. But Jen and I are here. Jen, maybe not so much, because I see her baby floating around in the background with her husband holding it. I'm here and definitely very passionate and happy to talk about them, about those apathetic kids that you think just want to survive the lesson, about your second language learners that you're wondering how they deal with inquiry, about how we find time to do all of this. There are answers to these questions. I just want to make sure that we keep moving.
And so the very last thing that we have is this. And it's just, it looks like a bank of words, like resiliency, creativity, inspired, collaborative, grit, engaged, growth mindset. But those words are there for two reasons. One, we feel like there's a lot of rhetoric in the conferences we go to. We see them in the Globe and Mail, the conversations. We see it in books. We hear about this with education. How do we make our students blank? How do we get our classrooms blank? But the second reason those words are up there, more importantly, is because we've addressed them in the book. We've got lesson plans, we've got activities, and we've dealt with these words and more on how to just create this in the classroom. That's it.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, thank you.